A lot of changes to that map.
Kemudian ya seorang loh, ya kaya.
I'd like to see that it's just Erangel and Miramar, and the split. The only thing I will say is I would have personally preferred if it was more like 3-2-2-3, so we would have had a bit more of an even split. But as you said, this first week tonight and of course Saturday night is going to be predominantly Erangel. So we'll see if the players are able to adjust to that. There are going to be some teams that will be better equipped on Miramar. To kind of wait till next week.
Mantakan. Bye weh.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something that we discussed quite extensively during the charity showdown. We kind of recognized a couple of the teams were performing a little bit better on Miramar. I don't know, again, we're going to have to wait and see because things...
Quite a bit of contest at some times during the charity showdown, and whether or not that's going to continue to persist here in Series 1 remains to be seen, I suppose. Maybe some of the teams that were contesting have not been able to come through to Series 1, I should say. I remember, in particular, Made in Thailand was a team that we saw sort of getting into a lot of these early engagements, and they're not here, so does that open up maybe a bit of an easier time for some of the teams that they were dropping on top of?
I know for a fact that, Carnage, for instance, want to be going South Georgia Ball. They're going to be contesting, or at least were contesting in scrims. So you're right in saying that. You do wonder that at least in scrims is when all of that would have been sorted out. For those who aren't aware, the scrims for PCS, at least in the APAC region, they've been very topical. We'll just leave it at that. So you're not going to get the best practice. It's not as simple as that. And for those teams who maybe are new to coming into this PCS region for APAC, they might have taken a bit of a surprise to that. Whereas, of course, the likes of Atletico, Astra, Fury, they, and not just them, but also obviously all the other teams, Divine, Cerberus, DIC, pretty much all the Thailand teams, they would have a much better footing going into those scrims, being able to get their drop locations, and then obviously coming into the main event, they should be able to get, for the most part, their drops that they want. It's those new teams coming in, the Bahumats, for instance, some of the Indonesian teams, Carnage, they're the ones that are going to be fighting the most, you'd think.
No, I mean, I think Carnage is a particularly interesting team to take a look at here, because I think they're probably the one that you would expect to struggle the most. And that's not necessarily because of the players or the individuals on the roster, but I think more so the circumstances that they come into, right? If we take into the context of how the Australian teams were, or the Oceanic teams were able to perform in Charity Showdown, and the fact that they were struggling with some of the meta, I guess, within the APAC region, and obviously on top of that, they have the ping issue there as well. I think for them, it's going to be the kind of the biggest wake-up call, seeing how these first couple of games go and how they're sort of able to integrate into this new sort of a competitive environment that they may not necessarily be used to, obviously, for the majority of these players. In fact, I think all of them, most of their career would have been within the ANZ region. So I think there's going to be a bit of a jump and a bit of a learning period for them over the course of today and maybe over the course of day number 2 as well.
Yeah, very ready. Going to be heading into our first match of the day very shortly. It is going to be Erangel, of course, to kickstart us here for PCS 1 APAC region. Game 1 underway, Jordan. And while every game is, of course, going to matter, you do not want to be leaving anything to chance, anything down to the final few games. It's a clean slate, though, for the majority of these teams, of course, who participated in the Charity Showdown. They're going to be wanting to put in a better performance. What's an intriguing stat, though, Jordan, is of the top 5 from Charity Showdown, only 2 ended up making it here to PCS 1 APAC. Missing out was first place Division X, 4th place Archangel Predator, and 5th place Made in Thailand, all not making it to PCS 1. So that means, realistically, Q Confirm, Buriram United, certainly are going to be favorites in a regard, but it's really should be an open field here.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you as well. I mean, you look to Q Confirm, who we have on our screen right now, and they sort of started off in the Charity Showdown day number 1 with a phenomenal performance, but slowed down toward the end of things. Now, in fact, actually, as we're alluding to right now, we're going to get a bit of an insight as to what PUBG Analytics thinks of how things are going to pan out there. You can see on the left of your screen just a little bit of a sneak peek as to maybe what we should be expecting in terms of the placements for this competition. I think one of the other teams that you probably want to mention to talk about, or a few of the other teams that we probably want to focus on here, are Golden Cat, who came 6th in the Charity Showdown, and obviously been able to qualify through here again. Divine Esports and DIC, both coming from Vietnam, also performed reasonably well, sitting in 8th and 7th respectively in Charity Showdown. So for me, those are probably the teams alongside, obviously, Boomerang, alongside Q Confirm, to keep an eye on, at least coming through from the Charity Showdown. But when you look at other teams that have come through in their region in first place, Cerberus, they came first in the Vietnamese region, and they were only 12th in Charity Showdown. So it may be a bit of an underperformance from Cerberus when we last got to take a look at them.
They wouldn't have been the only one, though, really. When you look at what Astra sort of put up in that first event, there were quite a few of those teams that probably didn't play to their best that they would have thought they would be able to perform. I think Buriram United was the team that probably lived up to their expectations the most. Q Confirm was one as well who probably lived up to expectations. Golden Cat started very, very well in the Charity Showdown, as we have to on your screen now, but they did kind of sort of just lag towards the end of the season. They dropped out of the top 5 going into the last couple of games, like the last 6 or 7 games, for instance. And one thing to note for this team in particular that myself and you as well, probably, Jordan, came to know, was that it's a very team-orientated team. There's not too much individual firepower that's like, oh, wow, this one player is their star player. They